Let's talk about some exciting white cards from Baldur's Gate, starting with Archivist of Ogma. For 1 and a white, it's a 2/2 halfling cleric with flash. Whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw a card. This is super sweet because now white's getting more options to draw cards, which is what we've been asking for anyways. So how often is our opponent going to search their library? Well, whenever they crack a fetch land, whenever they tutor, we can draw a card off of Evolving Wilds. It can be that simple. So this is a great card. Will our opponents remove this? Maybe in a more competitive scenario, but I think in a casual game, this may not be removed immediately. Ascend from Avernus. This is for X and 3 white. This is a sorcery. Return all creature and planeswalker cards with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile this card. So if you're playing a Cheerio deck, which means a 0 converted mana cost deck, specifically creatures or planeswalkers, we can get those all back, but most likely we're going to put something into the X for this card. Let's say we're paying at most 6, which I think would be a reasonable amount, so a total of 9 mana to bring back all our creatures and planeswalkers with mana value 6 or less. It's pretty sweet, and I love that it has the 3 white symbols because this is going to help deter people from putting it in just whatever deck. It encourages players to play mono white or 2 or less colors. Battle Angels of Tyr. For 2 and 2 white, it's a 4/4 Angel Knight with flying and myriad. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player has more cards in their hand than each other player. Then you create a treasure token if that player controls more lands than each other player. Then you gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player. And what's wonderful is that this has myriad, so it's going to hit each opponent. So it's very likely we're going to draw a card, we're going to make a treasure token, and we're going to gain 3 life from this awesome angel. Let's talk about Contraband Livestock. For 1 and a white, we can exile target creature, then roll a d20. 1 through 9, we're going to give the controller a 4/4 green ox creature token. 10 through 19, its controller creates a 2/2 green board creature token, and if we roll a 20, its controller creates a 0/1 white goat creature token. Normally white spells are going to cost us 1 white, but for an extra colorless, you can probably see this in a budget range of less than $1. The next card is Cut a Deal. For 2 and a white, this is a sorcery. Each opponent draws a card, then you draw a card for each opponent who drew a card this way. So if we have 3 opponents, each of them draw a card, and we get to draw 3 for 3 mana. I love it. Legion Loyalty. For 6 and 2 white, it's an enchantment that gives creatures we control myriad. That means whenever a creature with myriad attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. So if you have a lot of creatures that love ETBs or just hitting multiple players, this is going to be an amazing enchantment for you. And what's great is that this is for all the creatures we control. That means tokens, that means Sun Titans, that means whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield, we're going to get 2 more triggers, and that's going to be awesome. Next, let's talk about Your Temple is under attack. For 2 and 1 white, we can choose one. We can either Pray for Protection, which gives creatures we control indestructible until end of turn, or we can Strike a Deal, and that means you and target opponent each draw 2 cards. And this is awesome because it's at instant speed. And it's also very political. If we really need that card draw, we can talk to our opponent and say, hey, I'll give you 2 cards, but don't attack me next turn, or whatever we decide to make a deal with them. Next is Folk Hero. For 1 and a white, this is a legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Even if this happens only on our turn once each turn, that's still better than our normal just draw 1 card and pass. So this is amazing, especially for 2 mana. Deep Gnome Terramancer. For 1 and a white, it's a 2/2 gnome wizard that has flash. Whenever 1 or more lands enters the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played, you may search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Do this only once each turn. So how often are we going to get this awesome ability? I would say at least once each turn cycle. For example, if they crack their Evolving Wilds, they did not play the land that they're going to fetch for, that means we get a plains card. And what's awesome about that is because it doesn't specify a basic plains, so we can get something that counts as an island and a plains. It does enter tapped, but we are ramping just from our opponents doing what they normally do. This is awesome. If you liked this video, you're probably going to love this one right here. I talk about how many lands you need for exploration, and it may not be how many lands you're thinking of.